Hello, my name is Gray,
And my name is Crystal.
and this is Busty Asian Beauties, a supernatural commentary podcast where I, someone who has seen this show several times,
And I, someone who only knows the show through social media, discuss every single episode of Supernatural from start to finish. Also, we are both Asian.
both Asians. For today's episode, we will be discussing Season 1, Episode 14, Nightmare. Written by Sarah Gamble and Rael Tucker, directed by Phil Sagrisha. Do you know who those people are? I mean, you know who the
I
first
know
the
who
writers
Sarah
are.
Gamble is.
Yeah. But the director is pretty, like, he shows up a lot from season 1, I think, up until season 14. And he directed some prominent episodes.
Oh, he directed Mariah.
Okay, just to inform the audience, like, in every episode that we do, we put content warnings in the description of the episode. So you should go check that out before you dive into every single one of these. But specifically for this episode, we're putting it in the episode itself in case you missed that, and saying that this episode is quite heavy. It discusses child abuse. It's a lot. So tune out if that's not something that you want to listen to. Okay, so Crystal, what were your expectations for this episode going in?
So I knew that this was one that was connected to the larger meta plot and the Psychic Kid storyline. I knew because you'd warned me before that there was a child abuse plotline. So, and I think I knew sort of about a psychic kid with telekinesis. So I assumed some psychic kid with telekinesis, like, floated a gun around and killed his dad. And that was not too far off.
Okay, so we start with a car driving down the street into the garage. He turns off the engine and he's about to get out of the car when the car locks itself and locks him inside. The keys of the car turn and the exhaust pipe starts belching dark smoke, and he struggles but cannot open the car. As we've seen in, typical movies and television shows. #1 method of suicide, I suppose, back when cars had really bad smoke belching whatever.
Yeah, it's carbon monoxide poisoning,
Yes,
right?
yes. So he struggles and struggles until the smoke finally gets to him and he dies. While this is happening, we get the reveal that it's actually a dream. Sam is having a dream. He's having another one of his premonitions. He busts out of bed and wakes Dean up. And I find it interesting that Dean's hand was like lying on its side. Like Sam was just able to grab it immediately. And I was like, does he do that on purpose? That's kind of cute. So they rise up and Sam's like, we have to go. And Dean is a bit confused and sleepy. And he does that often GIF thing where he rubs his eyes with the back of his hand. And then he gets up and they go to leave in urgency.
There's a pretty cool fade from the lamp in the motel to the headlights of the Impala for the next scene.
Go Phil Sagrisha.
Yeah.
He's having fun.
Go Phil. And Sam's on the phone pretending to be a cop, and he's asking for the address of whoever owns the car that he saw in his dream because he saw the license plate. Dean's trying to tell Sam to relax, that it's just a nightmare, that this doesn't mean anything, and that all the other times that Sam had premonitions, that was because it was actually related to him instead of some rando guy in Michigan. Sam doesn't really believe that, and he gets that the name of the man who died in his dream is Jim Miller, and he lives in Michigan, so it's a couple of hours drive from there. Now they show up at the Miller house eventually, and he is already dead. There's already smoke coming out of the garage. Too late. Woof. And then it's the title card.
So there is like a crowd of people around the house which is very, very rude, I think. When someone is
Yeah.
dead in your neighborhood, don't crowd around the house, you guys. Sam and Dean ask one of the people in the crowd what happened. And the woman says, oh, he committed suicide. They found him in the garage, locked inside the car with the engine running. And the woman mentions that it happened about an hour or two ago. So she mentions also that she sees this guy every Sunday. Well, saw. The show also made a point of
Whoop.
doing that. Like, he seems, and then she stops and go, he seemed normal. But yeah, she saw the guy every week at St. Augustine, which is going to be important in a little while. So they leave the scene and they go back to the car. And Sam is obviously distraught. And Dean tries to tell him that we came here as fast as we could. And Sam says, not fast enough. He laments that, like, why make him be able to get these premonitions if he can't stop them? And Dean is like, maybe the guy just killed himself. And I was like, the whole time, I was like, come on, Dean, come on. And then Sam, convinces Dean that this is something that's happening. He was murdered. Dean tells Sam that they should investigate the house and the family. And Sam says they're not going to want to talk to us. The family is devastated. And Dean says, well, I know who they would like to talk to.
And we get the first priest outfits of this show. How many more are there?
I think there's just 2, right?
Oh, okay. People are just enormously horny for the 2 times I see.
I think there's 2 because there's only 2 priest outfits of Sam that I see. But, like, who knows? Maybe that's just, like, for comparison, because one of them is he's very young and the other one is his hairline is quite receded.
Oh,
but he
no.
looks good in both of them.
We cut to Dean and Sam in little priest outfits, knocking on the Miller's door. Sam says this has gotta be a whole new low for us, because Sam's a good little Catholic boy.
Do you know about the bloopers of this scene?
Is this about the sausage eating?
No. It's about the one where they do a take where they take off their jacket and, like, if you don't know this, fun fact.
Oh,
but in
right, where, like,
Supernatural-
their jackets don't have sleeves. It's like a fucking tank top.
Yeah. Actually, like, literally just 3 days ago or so, I was looking for pictures. There's a picture where Jensen is putting on a jacket and his plaid shirt is sleeveless. And it has been haunting me for years and I can't find it anymore. And I'm so devastated because I wanted to haunt other people as well. I will try to find it. And if I do, I'll post it in our socials. So follow us in our social media for that.
Yeah, so Dean introduces him and Sam as Father Simmons and Father Fraley from St. Augustine's, to the man who answers the door, who we find out later is the dead Mr. Miller's brother. Dean's really playing up the church act, saying it's in difficult times like these when the Lord's guidance is most needed. Later he says, after all, we are all God's children. Like, he's having fun.
He is ahead of his time because We Are All God's Children was like the song for the Pope coming to the Philippines back in like 2017 or something. And every single, like,
Nice.
I remember that line because, like, we like sang it every day for school. Weird times. Catholic school is such an experience.
Yeah, sounds like it. The brother is not very receptive to them. He seems to just be upset over his brother's death. Mrs. Miller appears and offers them some coffee. They sit and talk for a bit. Dean is sort of sneakily eating a lot of cocktail sausages, and they ask around about Mr. Miller. He had no history of depression. They find out that their son Max was the one who found him dead in the garage, and Sam decides to go over and talk to him.
Dean continues talking to Miss Miller. He, like, tries to subtly get her to talk about the house. So she was like, "Oh, we moved in here 5 years ago." And Dean was like, "Oh, old houses like this are beautiful. Maybe there are some problems because it's so old." Like he's not being subtle, but it's fun to watch. He lists some things that could be wrong with the house, and she says, "No, the house has been perfect." He asks to go to the bathroom. Meanwhile, Sam is talking to Max. He's asking what Max's dad was like. How would you describe the way Max is answering right now?
He's not being very open, I suppose.
Yeah, he's like answering at the very basic level that you can answer these questions. So he says that he's just a normal dad, and that when he found his dad, he woke up and the engine was running, and that he didn't know why his dad did it. Sam says like, "Oh, it's very hard to lose a parent, especially when you don't have all the answers," which again is our Sam finds a mirror moment.
As soon as Sam went over to talk to Max, I was like, of course Sam is on talk to emo son duty. Like, we've seen it in Bugs, we'll see it again.
Exactly. We go back to Dean, who is now upstairs, and he whips out. What the fuck is this?
This fucking thing!
It's like a two-pointed laser, right? And it has a screen, and I have no idea what it does. I suppose if like there's a ghost somewhere, the laser wouldn't pass through it and he can see the shape of the thing or some stupid shit like that. But whatever it is, it's a goofy looking thing, and it like the whole time he was waving it around, I was like, okay, so this is happening. Apparently, according to the transcript, it's an infrared thermal scanner. Doesn't look like an infrared thermal scanner to me, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
So he's just looking around, and the whole point of this scene is to show us that there's nothing in the house. Like, the house is not the problem.
They head out and they go back to the motel, and we see Dean cleaning his weapons, which I think is in a lot of AMVs and possibly the famous clicky AMV.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh, also, because you mentioned that, I just want to mention Sam is wearing his Carhartt brown jacket this episode, pretty much the entire duration.
Oh!
And I was so
Yeah,
happy.
iconic.
Like, we know from previous episodes that I have a leather jacket that I bought because of Dean. But I also am planning to buy a Carhartt jacket, like, for the Sam vibes. It's just, I checked, like, in Amazon, like, how much it is. I mean, I'm not gonna buy it from Amazon because the shipping's expensive as fuck over here. But it's, like, $100. But actually, in the Philippines, there's,
What?
like, secondhand shops for Carhartt. And there's a lot of them. And they're,
Oh.
like, $20. So maybe I'll buy.
Nice.
Maybe I will.
Right. Have you found any cheap trench coats yet, though, is the
No,
important
I
question.
showed you one last time, but it doesn't look like Cass's at all. But even then, I was like tempted.
Yeah, I would like a trench coat, but they are all, like, over $100 for some reason.
Yeah, Cass cost trench coat inflation, if I say so myself.
If you want to learn more about that, Google Cass inflation.
Are you sure? I'm sure that will relay amazing results.
Yeah! So, they're back at the motel, and they're like, yeah, we've found nothing. Nothing bad has happened in the house. Nothing bad has happened on the land, etc., etc. And then Sam says, okay, well, maybe it's connected to Jim or the family, but the whole time he seems to be having this really intense headache. And he's, like, rubbing his face and making sounds, and eventually on the ground going, ah, my head. No, he sounds like he's actually in pain.
Yeah.
No, it's just the way the transcript has written it out. It just says, ah, my head. And then we go inside Sam's mind again. He's seeing the uncle, whose name is Roger, come into his house, and he's, like, drinking a bottle of wine. The window just sort of opens on its own, and he closes it, and then it opens again on its own in a way that's very good at building up suspense, I think. Because I think at first I was like, oh, the window is probably just gonna chop his hand off, and then, and then something more important gets chopped off.
His dick.
No! Yeah, so he's trying to close the window again, but it's not working. So he sticks his whole fucking head out of the window to try to close it, and then suddenly it goes down, and there's this fun little splash of corn syrup blood onto the window, and he's dead, probably, given that his head is gone.
His head like plops into the plant box. It's very fun. I remember this scene because I watched this when I was younger. And it gave me a phobia of car trunks because we don't have windows like this at home. So there's no reason for me to be afraid of like windows.
Right.
But I do remember that I watched this and I was like, oh, I will never put my head inside a car trunk ever again because the mechanism is quite the same, right?
Yeah.
And every time I get groceries, like even until now, years and years and years later, I'm like, oh no, this trunk is gonna chop my head off like that guy's head in Supernatural. So that's fun.
Yeah.
Every time I get groceries, every single time.
And now we're back to Sam in the motel, and he's going, okay, well, someone's gonna kill Roger Miller. Let's get out of here.
In the car, so they're driving really fast, and Sam is getting the address of Roger Miller. Dean makes a joke that, are you okay, Sam? If you're gonna hurl, go outside because you shouldn't vomit all over the upholstery. And then Sam confesses that he's scared, right? And that he's terrified that instead of just having nightmares, he's now seeing things while awake. And that the visions are getting, in his words, more intense and painful. Sam is like, what the hell is happening to me? Why am I watching the Millers die? And Dean's like, we're gonna figure it out. We face the unexplainable every day. This is just another unexplainable thing. And Sam says, it's never been in the family like this. He tells Dean to tell him the truth. He says, you can't tell me this doesn't freak you out. And Dean like does a little steely little stare into the void. And then he goes, this doesn't freak me out. And then Sam just like goes, okay, whatever, you lying liar.
Yeah. So they show up to Roger's apartment, and he's going in with groceries. So man's about to get his head chopped off, and Sam and Dean are calling after him, trying to get him to stop and talk to them, know that he's in danger. But he's just annoyed because he thinks that these are those two priests from earlier trying to convert him to Christianity again. He locks them out and ignores them, so they run into a back entrance where there's the fire escape, some very rickety looking stairs, and they're running up. They're about where Roger is when suddenly they hear a thump. And then they look up, and there's blood all over a window. Uh-oh. And they both sort of just stare. And then Dean gives Sam some cloth, and he's like, okay, like, start wiping our fingerprints off of this stair railing, 'cause we're super screwed. Because remember, like, 8 episodes ago when I was a serial killer that the cops were all looking for, and they had a pretty good photo of my face and my full name, and since then we've been introducing ourselves as Sam and Dean Winchester to, like, real people, including mayors of towns and stuff since then. This is a good time to remember that. Dean says all of that in the show, and then decides that he's gonna take a look inside.
Sam and Dean are walking back to the car now, and Dean is relaying that he found nothing in the house, just like in the Miller's house. And Sam insists that he saw, like, in his vision, a dark shape, and that something was stalking Roger. He says that it's connected to the family itself and not the houses. So they start exchanging ideas on what it could be. It could be a vengeful spirit, it could be a banshee. And Dean says it's basically a curse. So maybe Roger and Jim Miller got involved in something heavy. something curse-worthy.
They sure did.
They figure that maybe the men in the family are being attacked, so they're like worried for Max. And Sam says, well, I know one thing I have in common with these people. Our families are both cursed. And Dean takes offense at this. He's like, we're not cursed. What are you talking about? We just had our dark spots. Sam says, like, our dark spots are pretty dark. And Dean says, you're dark. Hashtag POC natural.
God, Dean just really does not want to admit that their family's fucked up at all. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor dude. Alright, so Sam and Dean are heading back in the Miller house in their little priest outfits again, and they're talking to Max again. They ask him about his dad and his uncle, and Max says that they used to hang out a lot when he was younger because they used to live in a different neighborhood where they were neighbors. Sam asks how it was in that house. Max is clearly not doing very emotionally fine and not being very forthcoming. He says it was fine. When Dean pushes more, he asks, why do you ask? And then he says that there was nothing, we were totally normal and happy.
The directing of this scene is very good, I think. It slowly zooms in on his face as he becomes more tense and more tense. And the acting is also pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
It does a very good job of showing and not explicitly telling that there is something going on in the Miller house.
Sam and Dean head outside and they're like, well, that was suspicious. And note that Max sounded pretty scared when he was talking about his old house, so they decide to investigate that neighborhood.
So, Sam and Dean are in the old neighborhood, and they're talking to some guy who apparently has lived in front of the house that the Millers lived in all those years ago. Sam and Dean ask about the Millers, and this guy remembers them and remembers that the brother lived next door. He asks, like, is that poor kid okay? Talking about Max, and Sam and Dean were a bit confused, and he clarifies that the kid was really mistreated and abused as a child, like physically. The father is a mean drunk and would hit the kid, and he broke Max's arm twice. The brother was also very mean and took a swing at the boy like every chance he could get. And finally, the stepmother, which prior to this we didn't know she was a stepmother. The stepmother was just quietly watching as the kid gets beaten up and did nothing to save or protect him. The neighbor says that he called the cops several times, but nothing was ever done. Apparently, Max's real mom died when he was young. This guy thought it was because of a car accident, but later on we learned that's not true. And then suddenly, Sam's head starts hurting again. He's like leaning forward because his head hurts so much, and the guy's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? And Sam is like, okay, we need to go now, we need to go. And they turn to go. Dean is supporting Sam like a good brother. And then Sam suddenly starts having visions again, and it's the Miller kitchen. So Mrs. Miller and Max are in the kitchen, and Max is talking about how Mrs. Miller never did anything to protect him and that she just watched and pretended that nothing was happening. At some point, Mrs. Miller says, I'm sorry. Oh, and this whole time, there's a knife.
The knife.
There's a knife that is being directed by Max's telekinetic abilities into Mrs. Miller's eyes. So Mrs. Miller says, I'm sorry. Max says, no, you're not. You just don't want to die. And then the knife slices into Mrs. Miller's head. And we see the back of the knife hit the wall that Mrs. Miller is leaning against. Fun
Yeah.
stuff.
It's a good shot. There were some good kills in this episode.
Cause I watch on my iPad, right? So I
Yeah.
like cover cover the part on the iPad where the scene is showing, because I didn't want to see like the knife go in. I was
Mm.
this there's some good kills in this episode, yeah.
So we go back to Sam, and he's realized that Max is doing everything. I love how like they don't solve a case in this episode. They just wander around until Sam's brain gives him another clue. And he tells Dean that it's happening through telekinesis, and that he was probably there during all of those deaths and causing all of those things to move. And then Sam says, "This whole time I wasn't connecting to the Millers, I was connecting to Max." And then he says, "I don't get why. I guess because we're so alike?" And Dean's immediately like, "The fuck? No, no, you're not." And Sam says, "We both have psychic abilities, we both..." And Dean stops him right away and he says, "Sam, Max is a monster." Which, very, very interesting.
It's fascinating because in Faith, Dean was also the person who was like, "Oh, this guy's a monster, we should kill him." And Sam is always the one who's like, we're not killing people, Dean. We're killing boys."
Yes! Oh god, I was about to say Sam a first body, but that's a different thing.
No.
That's a different thing. We do not shift that ship here, to be clear. Right, exactly like in Faith, Dean seems to be going off of actions. Basically, anyone who kills people is a monster. Dean, I'm pretty sure you've killed people. And Sam is like, no, this is a human and he can be reasoned with. He also says that wanting revenge on his family after enduring that much abuse makes some amount of sense. Yeah, Dean says he's no different from anything else we've hunted, alright? We gotta end him.
You just heard a very tragic thing to happen to a kid. There's absolutely no ounce of empathy for this person. I don't know. I guess they were trying to do like the whole thing where one of the brothers has an opinion and the other brother has to have the complete opposite opinion. But this scene onwards, Dean was just very frustrating to me.
Nah, he just kind of sucks. Oh, okay, because I've been in the fandom enough to know what the Dean girls are thinking. I feel like the Dean girls are thinking that Dean's doing all of this because John physically abused him, maybe, so, like, if he pretends that it's not that big of a deal for Max, he can pretend it's not that big of a deal for him. However, I don't know if it's even canon that John physically abused Dean.
Okay.
Is that part of it? Or is that just a thing in fan fiction?
There is a scene in Supernatural where one time Sam and Dean are talking about how Sam ran away when they were younger. And when John came home, he did something to Dean. Like, the actual wording, as I remember, is, "When Dad came home, ... That's supposed to be like an implication that John did something to Dean. So there are moments where it's implied, but I don't think it's explicitly like said
Right.
that like John beat Dean. I don't think Supernatural is brave enough to acknowledge that John did that and still be forgiving of him.
Yeah, then I guess from the Dean girl perspective, this could be Dean.
In denial.
Just like, like, I wouldn't kill my family over this, so, like, neither should Mac. Ugh, he's still annoying me a lot, though. And Sam makes Dean promise to follow Sam's lead on this one and let him talk to Max. And Dean's like, okay, sure, but I'm bringing my gun.
Bad idea, Dean. So, in the kitchen, we have Sam's premonition. It's happening, and Max is going at Mrs. Miller, but the knife is still not lifted yet, so it's just rattling on the table. And suddenly, Sam and Dean bust in, and they ask Max if they can talk to him for just a little bit outside. And Max at first was hesitant, but he eventually agrees. And they start walking out when Max catches a glimpse of Dean's gun in the mirror when Dean was about to open the door. And he feels threatened by this, obviously, because he immediately knows what's happening. And so he telekinetically closes all the doors, the windows, everything.
Dean takes the gun out, ready to shoot this guy.
Obviously, has telekinetic power, so he just fucking takes the gun from Dean and holds it himself. Sam starts trying to convince Max that they just want to talk, and Max is like, "Oh yeah, you want to talk? This is why you bought this gun?" And Sam is like, "The gun was a mistake.
Dean was a mistake."
Dean should have never been born." But he says that lying was a mistake, but we're not gonna lie anymore. Just hear us out. And Sam relays that he saw Max do everything that he did. Sam says that I saw your dad and your uncle get killed. I'm having visions about you. And Max says, "You're crazy." And Sam says, "Oh, I'm fucking crazy. Look at what you're doing." And Sam says, like, "I think I'm here to help you." Max, who is obviously very upset because he's crying, is like, "No one can help me." Sam is like, "We'll just talk. Dean and Alice," which is the mom, "will get out of here." By the way, the mom is like on the floor because Max flung her away and she hit her head on the kitchen counter. Dean this whole time is like, "No way, no way, no way. We're not doing that." Every time Sam brings up that they're gonna talk alone, this is the part where I was like, "Come on, Dean, come on."
Come on, Dean, just shut up.
Eventually, Dean reluctantly agrees, and he takes Alice up to a room upstairs, and Sam and Max go to sit for 5 minutes as Sam promised in the living room.
Sam did not prepare very well for this talk. Like, he was a lawyer. He should have had his Lincoln Douglas debate points out. But yeah, he and Max are sitting and talking. Max has like this little knife thing that he's spinning around on its point on the table the whole time, and it's a pretty cool effect. Quite stimmy. And Sam says, "I can't begin to understand what you went through." And Max says, "That's right, you can't." Sam's trying to convince Max to let his stepmother go, but Max says, like, "She never tried to save me. She's a part of it too." And then Sam calls the abuse like something that they did to you growing up, and Max reveals that it's been ongoing this whole time and shows Sam a lot of bruises and cuts on his chest. And then he says that when he found out about his powers, it felt like a gift because he was no longer helpless. So after his dad beat him, he knew that he had to kill him. And Sam asks why he didn't just leave. Max says it wasn't about getting away, just knowing they would still be out there. It was about not being afraid, which I thought was a pretty good line. Like, they do a good job with Max's acting and directing and making him a sympathetic character in this episode, and I feel like that was a good line to see why he's so set on killing them, though honestly just doing it out of revenge and anger I think is like sufficient explanation already.
They do a good job of the logic of the situation, right? This conversation leads to this action, and this action leads to this action. The logic flows, which is why later on when Sam says, if I could have only just said some other thing, like, it makes sense because it's not an inevitability. Like, the actions led to each other, which I thought was pretty good writing. Go Sarah Gamble and Rael Tucker.
Oh, for the first time. Yeah, it's because they're focusing on men and not Andrea. God.
I'm still upset about Andrea. Like, that kiss is still it's still something that I hold a grudge against.
Yeah, no, every time I think about bad supernatural woman writing, I'm just gonna think about Andrea. Yeah, so Max says, "When my dad used to look at me, there was hate in his eyes. Do you know what that feels like?" And Sam says no, which I think is wrong. I think that's incorrect. I mean, this episode has a fairly John-positive bent to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it makes sense with whatever Miss Sarah Gamble and Miss Raelle Tucker were trying to do. Then Max mentions that his dad blamed him for his mom's death. And Sam's like, why would that happen? And he says, because she died in my nursery while I was asleep in my crib. There was a fire, and whenever his dad got drunk, he said that his mom burned up while pinned to the ceiling. Dun dun dun!
This shocks Sam. He starts trying to convince Max that what happened to his mom is real because it happened to Sam's mom as well, which, we know is real.
And at this point, I wrote down Azazel misogyny moments. Kill the dad next time.
And then Sam connects the dots that, like, this may be why they're connected. Because the way that their moms were killed were connected and were probably killed by the same thing. He asks Max if his visions, his powers started 6 to 7 months ago. And Max is like, how did you know? And Sam's like, mine did as well. You and I were chosen.
Uh-oh.
What a way to put it. So Max immediately asks, like, chosen for what? Sam's like, I don't know what we're chosen for, but we are hunting for our mom's killer. So we can find answers and we can help you. You just have to let your stepmother go. And then Max, like, sits for a while and he thinks. And then he starts shaking his head. And he was like, no, I can't let her live. I still have nightmares. I'm scared all the time. I'm just waiting for the next beating all the time. I'm so sick of being scared. I just want this to be over. And Sam is like, it's not gonna be over. The nightmares won't end. This is the part where I'm like,
Sam, come on.
Sam. You can't even say it gets better. Come on, Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, to clarify, the "it gets better" joke that I made is a joke. Like, I know that, like, stuff like this is difficult and complex, but this is the part where I was saying earlier, like, it makes sense that Max's logic will end where it ends, which God, this episode is so sad. So Sam is like, it's not gonna end like this. It's just gonna be more pain. It will make you as bad as them.
Literally, shut up, Sam. Shut the fuck up, Sam.
I
think Max should get to shoot you too.
Yeah, for this reason alone, Dean should have died.
Dean should have died? You know what? Yeah. For this reason alone, Dean should have died. I agree.
So, Max uses his powers to put Sam in a closet. OMG, slay! So Sam is in a closet now, and he locks the closet basically by putting a drawer, like a big bookshelf, in front of the door to block it out.
So now we've gone to upstairs, and it's Dean helping Mrs. Miller with her head wound, and then Max comes in and sends Dean crashing into the wall. He has Dean's gun and raises it, and then he makes it float and points it at his stepmother. Dean tries to get in the way, and Max says, "Stay back, this isn't about you." And then Dean, in the stupidest line ever, says, "If you want to kill her, you gotta go through me first." And while I was watching, I think me and Max said, "Okay," at the same time.
Exactly.
Alright! Let's go, baby! So, Max, at this point, like, I know that this is a vision and that they're just doing a fun little thing where we're supposed to think for a second that Dean died. And all I felt was immense bitterness that Dean didn't actually die here. Ugh, it's so sad. Yeah, so Max fires the gun, and Dean has this bullet hole in the middle of his head, and he crashes to the ground, and Dean is dead forever, and that's the end of Supernatural, and I clapped and cheered. The end. Thank you for listening to this episode of Busty Asian. Anyway, no, it's sadly a vision, and we cut to Sam in the closet going, "No, don't kill Dean!" And then, in his great emotion, somehow the bookshelf in front of the door that he's trapped in just gets shoved out of the way, and Sam's like, "Oh, okay, what the fuck?" But then gets out.
Okay, so we go back upstairs where what happened earlier is happening again, and Dean is stepping in front of the gun again. When Max was about to shoot him, suddenly Sam busts in and starts pleading at Max that, like, we can help you. He says, what you're doing, it's not the solution. It's not gonna fix anything.
It's gonna fix Supernatural. Dean's gonna die, and it's gonna fix Supernatural, the show.
So Max is, in distress. And then suddenly his face clears up and it's like he has a realization. And he says, "You're right." So Sam immediately relaxes and he's like, "Oh, thank God, he's seen the light." But Max quickly turns the gun towards him and shoots. So, yeah.
Well, to clarify, he turns the gun towards himself and shoots.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like Max just killed Sam, which would be really funny, but no, nothing good happened here.
Yeah. This sure is an episode.
Sure is an episode. Ugh, it's just, like, Sam was so excited when he met Max, because he was like, finally I met someone else like me, like, I feel like these visions are coming to me for a reason so I can help people, and here's someone else with powers, and we've been chosen to help people together. And then, like, this, like, one guy that he thinks sort of gets it decides that life isn't worth living anymore. Like, where does that leave Sam? Yeah, so we cut back to the downstairs, and the cops are here, and Mrs. Miller is telling them a story about how Max attacked her and threatened her, but Sam and Dean tried to help. And she's just, crying and talking to the cops, and she's saying, "I've lost everyone." And are we supposed to feel bad for her here?
I don't fucking know, man.
So, now Sam and Dean are walking outside, and yeah, like you said, Sam says, if I just said something else, gotten through to him somehow, but Dean tells him not to beat himself up about it. He says that it wouldn't have mattered what you said. Max was too far gone. Which, yeah, I don't think is true, right? Like, that's not true. I think this is Dean's whole thing where he decided that this guy was a monster and he never really changed his mind since. Yeah, Sam still thinks that he should have done something, and Dean's like, well, like, the only way we could have done something is if we got here 20 years earlier.
Oh, like, also, like, in the interview with the mother, right? They make a point of mentioning where Max got the gun. Which I think might be a way for the writers to, like, kind of tell us that, like,
Dean done fucked up.
Yeah, like, this is kind of Dean's fault. And, like, it's so, again, like, the logic checks out. So, I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it's still such a sad way for things to have happened. And it's, like, if Dean just didn't bring the gun, Sam would have talked him out of it. So it frustrates me that Sam is the one who's guilty, and Dean is like, I did nothing wrong, and Sam did nothing wrong, and nobody did anything wrong other than Max. Like,
Incorrect, Dean. Shut the fuck up.
If you just didn't bring the gun, dude.
Max should have shot him. Anyway. Right, and then Sam says the most ridiculous line in Supernatural, which is, I'll tell you one thing, we're lucky we had Dad. Sure, Sarah Gamble and Raelle Tucker. Sure. And Dean's surprised and happy about this, and Sam says, like, yeah, if after Mom died, like, our dad had done more drinking and less demon hunting, then we would have had Max's childhood. Which, okay, you know what? At least me and Sam's aware that, like, John was, like, fully capable and willing to, like, physically abuse his kids, like, after Mary's death. Like, I guess it's very sad that Sam's aware of that, but, like, at least he and the writers are aware of that.
Yeah, and Dean replying, all things considered, also like cements that idea that like John isn't incapable of atrocities. It's just that it so happened in this turn of events that he didn't.
But yeah, Sam does say, like, we turned out okay thanks to him. Like, no, you turned out okay despite of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we're finally back at the motel room, and Sam and Dean are talking and packing up to go. Sam's wondering what this demon wants, why it killed all these people, and he thinks that maybe it was specifically after him and Max because they're special and have abilities. Dean says, Sam, if it had wanted you, it would have just taken you. This is not your fault. It's not about you. He's half right. And yeah, he says this is about the thing that did this to our family, and we're gonna find it and kill it, and that's it. And then Sam mentions that, like, he was able to telekinetically move the cabinet. Dean makes a joke about him having a lot of upper body strength, but he's like, no, I moved it, like, with my mind. And Dean looks pretty concerned about that, but then, like, picks up a spoon and tries to get Sam to telekinetically move it. But Sam's like, yeah, no, I think it just happened because I was in a lot of emotional distress. It was a freak adrenaline thing. And he also asks Dean, aren't you worried I could turn into Max or something? And Dean says, no way. You know why? And Sam says, no. Why? Dean says, because you got one advantage Max didn't have. Sam says, Dad? Because Dad's not here, Dean. And Dean says, no. Me. As long as I'm around, nothing bad is gonna happen to you.
No.
I'm sure this doesn't foreshadow anything ever.
No.
I'm sure that this conversation will not bite anyone in anyone's ass at any point ever in this show. Ugh, no, now I'm remembering, isn't there the part in season 2 where he's like, Dad told me that either I had to save you or I had to kill you?
Yeah.
Ugh. God.
I'm sorry, like, if you can see me right now, like, my head is down and I'm just going like, like, in small increments. Oh my god. So after that very, like, jokingly said but emotionally heavy scene, we have Dean saying that he knows where we need to go next because of the premonition Sam is having. And Sam's like, what are you talking about? And Dean says, we need to go to Vegas, baby! And Sam...
It's pretty good.
Sam was like, oh, come on, Dean. Like, he doesn't say that, but he says it with his face. And it's like a funny scene. But before Dean gets out of the motel room, it lingers on his face, which is how we know that he is concerned. And then the episode ends.
So, Gray, what did you think about this episode? I'm taking your role now.
So, I thought about this episode. Well, one, it's very sad, and I actually was not looking forward to watching it because I know what goes down. I don't know. It's that's basically my reaction to this episode. It's me just going over and over again. So,
yeah.
That's fun. How about you?
I thought, like, objectively it was pretty well written, and I think that Max's actor did a good job. and that they did a good job building up tension and suspense. And I liked the way it connected to the meta plot and how we finally get to be Sam-centric again. Yeah, baby.
Oh,
But yeah, it was sad.
I'm assuming that Eric Kripke, like, plotted out, like, season 1, 2, 3, maybe, at first, before going in, you know? Like, at the very least, right? And it's just so fascinating to me because this, you know, this plot begins here and then continues on for the next season. It's like, oh, throwback to when Supernatural had direction. Best line, worst line. What is your best line?
I like when Max says it wasn't about getting away, it was about not being afraid. Yeah, I thought it did a lot of work for the sentences that it was.
For me, my best line is, you got one advantage Max didn't have, me.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
Especially because of how the Sam and Dean brothership devolves, like, into something toxic and I would almost say, like, abusive in some ways. Hearing Dean be like, you will never experience the abuse or the torture and the, you know, tortured nature that Max eventually becomes because you have me, knowing that at some point Dean will be the source of that. It's like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, worst line. I'll go first because you might steal my worst line. When Sam says that you're no better than them if you do this.
Yeah, no, same. Come on, Sam.
I hated it so much.
Sam, I'm like pretty much always on your side until you're classist or decide that like murder is always wrong. Like, get over it. Shut up.
Okay, IMDb rating.
Okay, well, I think that this was a well-written episode, and I feel like at this point, most of the people watching are probably Sam fans, right? Because he's still the main character in this season. So, I don't know, maybe an 8.5?
8.5. I think it's a little bit better than 8.5. I'll say 8.6, just to spice things up. We're both wrong. It's 8.3.
No. What? But it was, like, well written.
It was actually very well written.
Yeah, like it was well written. The acting was pretty good. Yeah, like what do they have against it?
Oh, this user doesn't like it because it's like taking from old movie tropes.
Oh, yeah. I guess I probably haven't watched enough old horror movies, so maybe it does seem highly unoriginal if you're more genre aware.
Yeah. Like this review says Carrie's younger brother, and another review mentions Carrie, and a lot of reviews actually mention Carrie. So yeah, that makes sense because like Carrie is about like a girl who was like religiously something and then abused by her mother, right?
Yeah. Someone's specifically complaining about the infrared thermal scanner, and they're right.
So true.
Oh, the person that said, why not keep Psychic Sam? You are so right. Psychic Sam endgame now.
It says first scene in the already horrible writing. Less than 1 minute of runtime, they have a guy die from exhaust inhalation. But he flails around and struggles to get out while coughing and then drops dead and his eyes are wide open for some reason. And then they elaborate how that is not how someone dies of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Okay. How does someone die of carbon
because
monoxide
apparently like
poisoning?
they fall asleep first, silently and peacefully.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This show somehow gets worse with every episode.
Wait, this is so funny. Like, oh god, you're only in season 1, buddy.
Then they rated it 1 out of 10.
Because of the scientifically incorrect death scene?
Yeah, and also the guillotine scene was not accurate because the thick wooden window.
Yeah, no, I was like, how is that window heavy enough to chop off his head?
Yeah.
So they were right about that part.
Clearly no thought is put into any of these scenes. I'm so sorry, IMDb user.
Yeah, I hope that you've moved on to greener pastures and more scientifically accurate deaths in your media.
Yeah. That's it for this episode of Bust the Asian Beauties. Next time, we will be talking about Season 1, Episode 15, The Benders. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at twitter.com/beautiespodcast and on Tumblr at bustyasianbeautiespod.tumblr.com. Our official tag is babpod, BABpod.
You can email us any feedback, comments, or inquiries at bustyasianbeautiespod@gmail.com. See you guys next time. Bye!
Bye!